I'll be changing the types of videos that I'll be uploading on this channel for all future content. And the reason for this change is in response to Asic's new guidelines, Asic being the Australian Securities and Investment Commission. Their new guidelines basically stipulates that if we express opinions about financial products online, being shares, managed funds or ETFs, we could be looking at $1 million fine or potentially 5 years in prison. And so with that, it's just not worth the risk, which is why I'm doing a hard pivot. And I know this seems like a very extreme and unexpected thing to happen in Australia, and I didn't even believe it when people told me about it at first, until I actually looked up the ASIC legal guidelines and saw that this is all real. And I've also attached the guidelines in the description below in case you don't actually believe it yourselves. And although we can't talk about shares or ETFs, we can still talk about crypto, property or money saving tips. And you would assume that just disclaiming that you're not a licensed financial advisor would cover you. No, you could still be prosecuted. You would assume that if you only talk about what you're investing in yourself, nope, you can still be prosecuted. And you'd think that even talking about historical market statistics about a particular share or ETF product would be pretty safe because it's historical numbers and historical fact. But if an opinion can be interpreted out of giving those statistical facts, well then that could be considered financial advice as well, so we could still be prosecuted. And so for me, this is just too much of a legal tightrope to walk on. I mean, it only takes one slip up in either one of my videos, a podcast interview, or even replying to someone in the comments, and then I could be facing some very serious legal consequences. And can you actually imagine going to prison for this? I mean, 5 years in prison in itself would be pretty bad, but can you imagine actually going in for this? Imagine the conversations that you have with your fellow inmates. Like, what are you in for? Murder. What about yourself? I uploaded a video about how I invested my first shares. I mean, your time in prison is going to be horrible compared to the other inmates. And yeah, again, it's just too much of a risk, which is why I'm making this hard pivot. As a result of these new legal guidelines, every Australian online financial content creator has either had to close up shop or radically change the direction of their channel. Asic claimed that they created these new guidelines in an attempt to try and get everyone to get a financial advisor's license. But the problem with that is that it's about a minimum cost of about $10,000 and it can be up to $60,000, and then there's ongoing annual fees as well. And so it's just not a viable option for many of the online content creators who just want to tell their personal investing stories. And I've actually noticed this in a lot of the Instagrammers, podcasters and YouTubers who I follow myself. Many of them have either had to shut down or change direction. And it's so sad because some of them had some great content. What's even the worst thing though is that they've had to delete old content from before these guidelines were created. So I mean, there's some great podcasts I just love to listen to, and they've basically done their final episodes explaining why they're doing what they're doing, and a month later all of the episode histories have been deleted. I mean, it's actually pretty sad for the industry. And another precaution I've taken is that I've removed my book for sale in Australia. But don't worry, unless you're from North Korea, Russia or Australia, your book is still available. And now you're probably thinking, why would ASIC be doing this? I mean, there's two sides to every story, and surely there's a good reason behind this. Well, the reasons that they claim is that there's a lot of bad financial advice given online, and apparently all of it was coming from Australians. I think the best metaphor that I can personally give for these guidelines is that they used a nuclear bomb in order to do a job that a sniper should have done. But enough about that, let's keep this in a positive direction. So anyway, that basically covers why I'm pivoting, but now I'll move on to what I'm actually pivoting into. Well, primarily I'm going to be talking about very interesting moments in monetary history. And I know on the surface that sounds very boring. I mean, monetary history, both those words individually sound very boring, and you put them together, you just assume that'll multiply the boringness and create like a super boring level. And that was my assumption as well when I was desperately looking for new things to pivot into. And it turns out, for me personally, this is actually a bit of a blessing in disguise, because there are some incredible stories out there that just aren't widely known. As an example, in the early 1800s, there was a German man in his mid-30s, and he became the richest man in the world from the actions that he took on a single day. Another topic I'll be talking about is how the only person jailed during the GFC may have actually been innocent, and I'll let you, the viewer, decide on whether he should have gone to jail or not. And although the majority of my future content will be about monetary history, I'll also be talking a little bit about monetary and investment future. So what I mean by that is I'll be talking and discussing about some of the really interesting R&D projects that are going on in the world right now. So to summarize, that's basically all of the new content that'll be coming into the channel. And as far as content that'll be going out of the channel, I unfortunately will be dumping a lot of content. And so the obvious example of any mention of shares, ETFs or managed funds. I'm also cutting out any money saving tips. And I am still legally allowed to talk about saving money, but I mean, I just find this way too frustrating. Yeah, not having that freedom to talk about options for what you can invest that saved money into, it's it's only half the battle, and it's not going to do the desired job of helping someone reach the financial independence, retire early. So that's basically what's leaving the channel. And I will be keeping some of the content that I used to talk about in the past, and it'll just be remaining the same. So that is the macroeconomic trends. So examples of this is the world's aging populations, and also with that, how certain countries are addressing this problem. So examples include immigration policy, how artificial intelligence is being used to replace these shortfalls for not having enough workers to replace retiring workers. If you're an Australian and you consume a lot of online financial content, there's no need to panic, because it turns out that a lot of the content from the internet doesn't actually come from Australia. Whoa. Are you telling me that when Australians use the internet, that the majority of the content that we see on the internet doesn't actually originate from Australia, and in fact it's actually an extreme minority? So as a consumer, we're probably not going to be too badly affected. Anyway, I hope you stay with me when I talk about some really interesting historical moments in investing in monetary history. And I noticed in the analytics that a lot of the viewers here come from India, and so for any Indians that are watching this, can you please tell me in the comments what kind of content you'd love to see in the future videos? Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you stay with me. Thanks.